Guerrero, PhD from USA, who's going to be moderator. If I can read his bio, Dr. Guerrero, he helps corporations around the world with the necessities of technological development. Dr. Guerrero is the CEO and founder of Cambridge Research and Technology LLC, a consulting firm leading in science and engineering in Cambridge, Boston. He's a member of the University Grants Committee of Hong Kong. Go ahead, Julio Guerrero. Thank you very much. Good morning. Those are in South America, good afternoon and good evening, maybe for ZETTI, GAVELAN. Thank you for your excellent presentation. The role that I've been giving today is the facilitator of a discussion among you guys. It's a conversation. So we're going to, the framework of the presentation is Industry 4.0. We are going to have as a reference your master presentation, ZETTI, and we're going to try to extract a little bit of the experience of the three panel members. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to introduce I'm going to present the three panelists. I have the honor, I have the brief of Miguel and then Mario Marchese and Iván VERA to introduce themselves, a brief, half a minute, 1 minute, and then we can have this conversation. So I'm going to read again. CANZ. Miguel, he is an electronic engineer certified in security of information with more than 18 years leading technology teams in international companies, leading in the mining sector, working with Argentina, Chile, Peru. Since 2014, he's MMG Las Bambas as the regional manager of technology for the Americas. In the past, he worked as an infrastructure engineer in communication for Glencore, and he was a superintendent at IT for Estrata, Peru, and others. It's an honor to have you here, Miguel. Please, Mario, you've been chosen randomly to introduce yourself. So 1 minute, very brief about your background, and then we're going to go to the rest of it. Thank you very much, Julio. Pleasure to be here. Good afternoon, good evening, ZETTI. Pleasure to be here and be part of this conversation today. As Julio said, Mario Marchese. I have more than 35 years of experience in the energy and mining sector, and my responsibility in the division of technology and innovation of Codelco Chile for many years, Codelco Tech, and nowadays I'm a director of the business area of Boulder Associates, part of WSP, Latin American Caribbean, a consulting company in earth sciences, technology, and development of monitoring of impact. I lived in Peru for many years in the Hatch engineers in Lima, and I was fortunate to meet, to know the country, and lots of friends in the region. And thank you very much for being in this panel. Iván. Thank you for the invitation, Julio. I'm glad to be here in this Copimera and sharing this panel with experts in each of their fields, different focus to mining. I'm 63 years old, and 32 of those years I'm innovating and teaching how to be entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. 32 years ago, I created a company called Spiral, and at that moment in 1989, I visualized the possibility of installing innovation capabilities in big companies in Chile. And then in these 32 years, that's what we have done. We have done this in big companies of different industries, including mining, and innovate corporate innovative capacities in big companies, including Codelco, including Next, Walmart, MetLife, or companies, Santander Bank, etc. In mining industry, I think it's very interesting the potential that is to digitalize, and I would like to connect later in the conversation we're going to have with another experience I had, another entrepreneurship I created 8 years ago, an accelerator of corporate innovation that is creating funding, venture capitals to accelerate the digital transformation of those companies.
Excelente, muchísimas
Thank
gracias.
you very much.
Voy a
I'm going to
compartir con ustedes
share with you
la primera, digamos, la primera pregunta,
the
¿no?
first question.
Si cada uno de los
Each
tres
one
panelistas
of the three panelists
pudiera
could
compartir con nosotros,
share with you with
digamos, en un
us
promedio de 3
uh,
minutos, ¿no?
3 minutes or
Tiempo.
so, no more than that.
¿Cuál es
What is the
posición, su
your experience, your
o
exposure
su
to,
opinión
or your opinion
acerca
about
de las ventajas
the advantages
presenta
that
revolución
the
industrial
advantages of
4.0
this
para
Industrial
que
Revolution 4.0
los que
so
están
that the
atentos a
members
esta
of the
presentación
audience
puedan
can
tener una impresión, una
have
idea general de cuál es
a general
vuestra
view of what is
exposición
your exposure, your experience
a esta tecnología.
to this
Podemos
technology.
comenzar,
So let's start with Miguel.
comenzar Miguel, después Mario,
Miguel,
después
Mario, and then
Bueno, primero, buenos días, buenas
first
tardes.
of all, good evening, good morning, good evening, good
Muchísimas
afternoon.
gracias por la
Thank you very
invitación,
much for
la
the
oportunidad de
invitation and the
escuchar y
opportunity to
compartir
listen and share
conocimientos y experiencias.
knowledges and experience here.
Bueno, con respecto a
About
la pregunta,
the question,
las ventajas de
the
la industria
advantages of the
4.0,
Industry
creo que es la
4.0, I
consigna.
understand is
En
the
realidad,
question at hand. So
nosotros somos
we
empresas
are
mineras,
mining
producimos cobre.
companies, we produce
Producíamos
copper.
cobre hace 50
We
años,
produced copper 50 years ago. We are going to keep
50
producing for 50 more
producimos
years.
cobre hoy.
We produce copper today. So
La ventaja está
the
en ser
advantage is
competitivos,
being
eficientes,
competitive, efficient,
tener
having
la mejor calidad de
the
producción
best
con menor
quality of
costo
production with the
y en la
less
forma
possible
más
cost
segura
and
posible.
in the safest
Los
way
pilares son
possible.
seguridad
The
y
pillars are
costo, siempre.
safety, volume,
Entonces,
and cost.
si nosotros podemos
So if
producir
we are
cobre
able to
de forma
produce
segura,
copper in a
con
safe
menor costo
manner,
y a
in a
bajo
good
costo,
volume and a
esa
low
es la ventaja
cost,
de nuestra
that's the advantage
industria.
of our
Ahora,
industry. Now,
el 4.0,
the
supongo
4.0,
que nos
of
ayuda a ser
course, is going
muchísimo
to
más
help us to
eficientes.
be more
Y la
efficient,
eficiencia
and
impacta todos esos
efficiency
KPIs que acabo de
touches
mencionar.
all those KPIs that
Entonces,
I mentioned.
esa es la
So
gran ventaja de
this is
tener
the greatest
información en
advantage of
tiempo real
having
para tomar
information in real
decisiones en
time for
tiempo real
decision making in
para
real
poder
time
producir mejor.
to produce
Y
better.
esa es la gran oportunidad que nos
And
da
that's a great
la
opportunity
industria
of the
4.0
Industry
por medio del
4.0
Internet de
through
las
the use
cosas, la
of
conectividad,
IoT, artificial
la avanzada
intelligence, advanced
big
analytics, which is a fundamental
data.
here.
Y
And
eso redondea
I
todos
think
estos
that kind of
factores que son los
sums up
habilitadores que nos
all
permiten
these
ser eficientes
enablers that SETI was
y nos
mentioning.
permiten ser más
And
eficientes.
with that, we can
Esa
be even more
excelencia
efficient.
operacional que
The
decía Seti
operational
como
excellence that SETI mentioned,
el gran pilar, nuevo
the
pilar que
great
tiene
pillar
la
that
minería.
the mining has.
Ese es mi respuesta.
That's my
Gracias.
answer.
Excelente.
Thank you very
Muchísimas
much.
gracias, Miguel. Mario,
Thank you,
por favor.
Miguel. Mario.
Gracias, Julio. Coincido con Miguel, en el
Thank you,
fondo.
Julio. I agree with Julio.
Hay una tendencia, hay un
Uh,
movimiento a nivel global de moverse
there is
hacia lo
a
que denominamos la
trend to
industria
move to
4.0.
the Industry
Sin embargo,
4.0.
todavía hay
However,
un entendimiento
there
claro
is not
de
a
qué
full
significa esto.
understanding of
Cuando
what
hablamos
does
de
it mean.
transformación
When we
digital,
talk about
mucha
digital
gente cree que
transformation,
es
many people
incorporar
say it's just to
sensores,
incorporate sensors
sistemas computacionales.
or
Hace poco
computational
trabajé
systems.
con una empresa,
I was working with a company.
actúo como mentor con algunos
I'm kind
vendedores
of a
globales de
mentor to
empresas
some
norteamericanas.
salesmen in
Y
some
nosotros estamos
companies.
ya en el 4.0.
We are in the
Estamos trabajando en el
4.0.
tema
We
y
just
tenemos
bought
una
a
planilla
system
Excel
and everything is in an
eliminamos el
Excel
cuadernito y
template.
trabajamos en
We
una Excel
eliminate the notebook
siguiente
and
paso
now
al
we're in Excel.
4.0.
So he
Entonces,
thought he is in
hay que entender que
4.0.
este es un cambio
So we have to
cultural,
understand this is
más
a
allá de la
cultural
tecnología,
mindset apart from the
distintos
technology, where
niveles
at
científicos,
different levels and
con distinta profundidad,
with different degrees of
siguen
deepness, as
la
Miguel
analítica,
mentioned, the
tomarlos
analytics
en valor.
to give
¿Qué hago
value
con
to
los
the
datos?
data.
¿Qué hago
What
con
do
lo
I
que
do with
mido
what
en
can I do
función
with
de
the
mi
data? How
operación?
can
De
I
manera de
help the
poder ser lo
management of
más
my
eficiente,
operation
de
to
poder
make it more
ser
efficient?
rentable
to make it more profitable, and on the other hand, more sustainable. When I was Codelco Tech, the focus as a company in four areas: the efficient use of the energy of the water, digital transformation at Codelco, and all of that has to do with new processes for the processing and treatment of minerals that were more complex. So there's an addition of elements that we have to consider in the development and implementation, but we now have to have an understanding to incorporate sensors, technologies, and such, because it's the trend. It may be money that you invest very badly, maybe things that complicate our things more. It doesn't make it more efficient or doesn't make it cheaper. So from that point of view, I believe to identify that what's our goal and to see what do I have in the market to reach that objective. I have seen in operations because there's a new online analyzer, and where do I place it? And I don't know if you need the analyzer. So what value is that analyzer going to do? Because the analyzer came, this is modern, we're going to make money, and so and so. The industry is talking about remoteness and automation. People at the center have to consider, as in Peru and Chile, many of the mining operations are over 3,500 meters above sea level, and that's a challenge for the body to work under those conditions. And companies have been having their control centers in near cities, so to minimize the amount of transportation of people. That is technology that has a purpose with people in the center and goes hand in hand with the technological development. Implementing technology because it's the trend could be a high cost, and results are going to be bad for the operation. That's what I saw, and that's my exposure in many mining companies that today are in processes of this nature. Thank you. Thank you, Mario. Ivan. As I mentioned, I work how to construct capabilities of innovations from 32 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, or maybe more, 16 years ago. Half of the time I'm doing this, I found out that it was very important to measure the impact of innovation in the result of the company. A retail, a bank, a mining, or a vendor for mining industry, everybody's going to have an indicator of results. For example, EBITDA or EBIT, or our contribution margin. Everybody's going to measure the results. So the question was, what percentage of the result comes from innovations that have to do less than 5 years since we implemented? And as I said, I started measuring that maybe 16 years ago. And when Juan Andres Errázuriz, the executive president or general manager of an NIX, National Company of Explosives, the number 6 around the world in blasting, I want to have innovation capacity. First, let's measure what is the situation today. 2.4%. The 2% of the result of the company came from innovation that less than 5 years. We started managing a portfolio with having results. Of course, these in the innovations were innovations of product, service, process, and business models, either of the four, because it's a supplier for miner. The mining companies are going to do process innovation, business model innovation, but not product in general, because the product is a standard, right? So, short story, NIX in 5 years from 2.4% to 20% of results in innovation. So 2.4, 4.6, 13.9, 15.2, 17, 20. 20%. When we were beyond 10%, we were at 13%, and in Codelco there was a problem that some operator, for example, was at site, I mean Chucky open pit, and the solution was telecommanding or robotics in the blasting system. So we started working in that problem that you can't remove the copper in that area because people are not available. The only way to do it is with people. So we started working with Stanford Research Institute in California, developing a robotic line for robotic blasting. It was in 2015. 3 months ago, those robots are in operation in Anglo America, Chile, and that the first robotic blasting happened, in my experience, in the history of humanity, because Orica doesn't have that capability that NIX has it. But what I want to say here is, if we didn't measure that innovation was giving 13% results, Juan Eduardo Razo, the board member of NIX and SICAP, wouldn't authorize the investment of hiring Stanford Research Institute to develop a robotic line, because he will not be a firm believer that the company could not innovate and have world-class results. And I'm proud that NIX here is the first company, blasting company around the world doing robotic blasting, three on the world behind Orica. So I agree with Mario that the result of innovation has to be visible for the board of directors. And the board of directors likes Evita, and
Excelente.
that's what they do.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much
A los tres.
to the three of you.
Responder como framework
Now, as a framework
para la siguiente pregunta,
for the next question,
una estructura que
a structure that ZETTI shared with us
presentación.
during his presentation.
Nos presentó algo
He
así como
showed
un
us
triángulo
something like a triangle where one of the legs was digitalization. He mentioned that the digitalization includes the cloud, the integration with the database, processing, the PLC, the bandwidth, etc. The second leg of that triangle was the integration. And the third one is the automation. And the center of that triangle was the 4.0. So having that pictured in your background, I want the three of you, starting with Miguel, to share with us an experience, if it was maybe a challenging or complex experience. Tell us the story about the process behind it that I had to follow in order to convince, your colleagues, managers, etc., and then to be able to carry that implementation of a program to get to the 4.0. Miguel.
Bueno, esa figura de SETI muestra muy bien.
The picture that SETI showed, I think it reflects all the process to be able to digitalize, to be able to progress in all of the Industry 4.0, digital mining, or smart mining, now we call it. We have to have a roadmap, and one of the first points of the roadmap are the enablers. Enablers, so that making everything happen in a place as a mine 4,000 meters above sea level, a big amount of land, capture data, the challenge of public services don't reach, and when they reach, they don't have the capabilities to have a connectivity to the data centers, the cloud. High quality is also a challenge. So we work around the platform, to having a platform that is capable of transmitting data and handling the data, managing the data in an efficient way, and that takes time. Parallel to this, we start with the senior management or the board to say that during digital transformation is going to be part of our day-to-day, and with proposals to see how we could take this digital transformation in the business. So we traced the line, and then we started trying to convince the business that this was the right path. So it's a path. It's not a point. It's not a project in particular. It's not nothing that starts and finishes. This continues. So what we did was divide them in stages. First, we did the technological platforms, which are the enablers, and then we had an objective with a definition because each business, or if we look in definition of digital mining, smart mining, digital transformation, we find lots of commonalities and lots of many different things. So what we did as a business define what it meant for us, the digital mining. And then at the start of this year, we ran the now to smart mining for 2030. So we are in the process of digital transformation, and our technology, the base technology is implemented. Now we're on the path of digital transformation. We cannot say it's ready or we're there, and we're on the path of a digital mine according to our definition, and with the objective of having a smart mine as our objective in 2030. And that's basically the work that we have done.
Muchísimas gracias,
Excellent.
Miguel.
Thank you very
Mario,
much,
por
Miguel.
favor,
Mario,
comparte con nosotros
share with
una
us
experiencia análoga.
your experience.
Mira, yo coincido con
I
Zeti en
agree
el
with
sentido
the
de que,
SETI,
como les decía anteriormente,
as I mentioned before,
en gran medida es poner información y
is
datos
put
en
information and data, give
no podemos
value
estar
to the
ajenos a los
information and
desafíos
data.
tecnológicos que eso acarrea.
We have to be aware of those challenges,
Es el manejo de esos datos,
the management of the data, which is produced in an immense volume.
la operación de
The
Ministro Ales,
operation of Ministro Ales, north of Chile, is 8 teras of information in every ship, so 24 teras per day. So that means the challenge is, where do I store all of that? So that meant to have, I don't know, a big server farm with high speed, and that's why we developed clouds and virtual storage systems, and remote access to that information at any point where I can connect through internet to the cloud, and then on the other hand, take this information and manage it. Another example, an Airbus 320, every time it lands, there's 60 teras from the flight. That's the download report for operational parameters until what movie, Julio that was sitting in 8A, what he ate, what movie, etc. We could follow. And that's why I say, why do I get an offer for a destination? The big brother is watching you concept. So from that standpoint, in our experience in Codelco, having this information available, then some algorithms were developed for artificial intelligence to do an analysis of the operation to ensure its continuity and the minimum disruption of the plant without operator intervention. For example, an overload of the SAG mill meant that the operator, the human, acted immediately and cut the conveyor belt feeding and stopped the feeding, and that the mill basically downloaded for an hour, and then we have the stability, so that took 3 or 4 hours to get back to normal. We start the conveyor belt and charge the mill, get to the maximum capacity of the SAG. The system, the analysis of the data demonstrated that it was not necessary to stop the conveyor belt, just to reduce the feeding speed, wait for the mill to get to a new condition of operation, and continue. So my belt is production. So nominal 0 to reduce a value. So I don't lose production. With that piece of data, we were able to reach an availability of 93%. Without the human intervention, the operator was redirected to look for opportunities of improvement where the process could be modified to improve the efficiency. It's not that we eliminated or fired the person, the tasks were relocated and we left the operation. So that means 50,000 of fine copper additional to the production program we had, considering that these disturbances were reduced. That's a value of this incorporation. As Ivan mentioned, if this doesn't transform in profits, in EBITDA, it's no good. Innovation just for the fun of it, because it's fun, it's in fashion, it's just throwing money. This needs to have an economic component. It has to be reflected in the last line. If it doesn't happen, the top down and there's no buy-in from the senior management or the board of directors, then the operator will not adopt this because they're going to see this as a kind of threat. So there's gonna be a machine or a robot, and I'm gonna lose my job, and he's gonna be concerned that that machine is not gonna operate. So in terms of the authority, there's a challenge. Also, when you go into these systems, who is the owner of the data? And it's a struggle when we hire a service of the cloud and you talk with the Watson of IBM or Microsoft, Azure, who's the owner of that piece of data? Because the information is there. So there is something that is not regulated from the authority point of view, standards, and now is a negotiation through a contract between the parties, but there's that struggle, and the clause, that's the hardest clause to some. The data supplier on my data. How can I protect my information? And that's the key value there. Julio. Julio, you are muted. Julio. Julio, you're muted. Micro, Julio.
Más la conversación.
Now to develop a conversation in this piece of data about the ownership of the data that happens in all the different industries, extraction industry. Ivan. Thank you, Julio. Connecting to what Mario mentioned, I had to collaborate with Codelco for 2 years, installing the measurement of the innovation index, the percentage of the EBITDA comes from innovation less than 5 years over the total of the EBITDA, not only for the corporation, but each of the divisions. And we were identifying portfolios of innovations that were active in each of the divisions. I think 9 divisions or so, but they were not 3 or 5, 8 or 9. And in the Ministeriales, Carlos Caballero, the manager at that time, led the implementation of automation systems and remotization of the operation. So when we talked about this, and it was amazing what they had done, they were operating everything with LED screens and joysticks from Santiago to an operation that was maybe 3,000 kilometers to the north. And I said to Carlos, have you measured the impact of the EBITDA in this? Because it looks spectacular. So he said, yes, look, we're estimating that productivity. I'm not talking about productivity, I'm talking about the impact in EBITDA, in dollars. So we haven't measured it. So, okay, let's measure this, Carlos, because that's going to make a difference in the conversation you're going to have with the board of directors. And that's the governance, you know. So we measure this. It took us 3 weeks to measure it. And it's a report that has 9 pages of equations validated by the general manager of each of the divisions and the engineers of Honeywell, who were the suppliers of the remotization automation system. Short story, 24%. Before this, it was 2%. So from 2 to 24 in a year. I've never seen that in my life. And I said, Carlos, you're in 24%, 24% from 2 to 24. And it's an amazing result. So we presented this to the board of directors. If that's true, That would be fantastic. Let's do an auditing process. So they hired Ernst& Young. I think it was Ernst& Young. Auditing process. 26% after the audit, not 24. For that piece of data, the board of directors wanted to mirror this process of remotization and automation in other divisions. So this is augmented intelligence. This is intelligence from the board augmented by data supplied by the operation and transformed in EBITDA. Because the board is not going to understand if they don't see, they want to see the EBITDA because they didn't know how to calculate how much in productivity was transformed in EBITDA due to the equations that for the operation. So I just want to say that the replication of an innovation is facilitated, it's lubricated when we measure the impact on results. And I also want to say another case in which the core of this is uncertainty. Let's not confuse uncertainty with risk. Uncertainty is the likelihood from 0 to 100. The likelihood of failing in trying a solution which is not zero. It is not zero probability because it's the first time we're going to do it. Codelco was the first time that was automating and making operations remote at 3,000 kilometers. So there is uncertainty. Uncertainty is always available, and it's kind of fog on the road when we're driving at 6 o'clock in the morning and there's a thick fog. The only way to see what's just to go slowly. So when we operate an innovation, develop a solution, apply, measure the impact, generate the intensity of innovation, then you reduce the uncertainty to the leaders of this innovating in a company that has a tradition of going safe, because mining industry is always wants to go try something that was tried by somebody else. Now it's changing because the innovation is taken now quickly by managers, vice presidents. Everybody is learning from this discipline of innovation and incorporating digital technology because it's obvious that it's going to give you deep impact. But uncertainty, the only way to eliminate it is going forward and measuring impact results. Excellent.
Sí.
Perdón, si me permites complementar un poco.
Just to add what Iván mentioned, in the case of Ministro Vales in Codelco, the implementation of the control room in Santiago, close to Calama, an investment, a significant investment. It was recovered in 8 months due to the profit or the earnings in production. And a second point that I think is very important, and also for the board of directors, is something that they always question. You know, the mining industry is conservative by nature. I don't want to be the first. I want to be the 10th, not the first. And the question in the board of directors, when you show an idea, who else has done that? Who else has it? Who did it? Hey, we're talking about innovation. This is a new idea. You are the only one. We are just, and that's where we have all that discussion. Will do we take the risk? And I agree with Ivan. Measure and progress, measure and progress. That's the only way to convince the board of directors that what you are earning. And the third component is people. People, when they face to this, they see as a threat. I'm going to be replaced by machine. And definitely what we're doing is transforming people. In the past, we had an operator. Now we have a maintenance for the robot. Where we had an operator, we have a programmer of the machine. So we have to consider that the reformatting or the job descriptions of our people and make them understand what you're going to have is a different kind of work. It's not that you're going to be fired. You're just going to do a different task. And Mario, let me add, we're doing just the robotization of Anna X. Nobody was fired. If they fired is by performance, but not the fire. People don't fire. They're good people. It's kind of stupid, So if a company decides to remove an engineer and hire a robot, no, he's going to be relocated. It's going to be, the person is going to be reinvented. So you fire somebody by performance.
La siguiente pregunta.
The next question, there are going to be two more questions. The second question, I'm going to try to think out of the box, out of your comfort zone, and I'm going to encourage you to go out of that. And I'm going to include ZETTI. So this is going to be for the 3 panelists in ZETTI, and this is going to enrich those of you that are attending this presentation. So far, in this meeting, we've been listening mainly about information about the pros and cons of this technology for an industry that is mainly extracting. You know, mining industry per se is extracting. So in my professional practice, I know that it's being used significantly in other extraction industry and oil and gas. So the question here is, since this conference is organized by Copimera for many countries in Latin America, the question is, how can we extrapolate the lessons that we are learning or we have learned in the use of this technology for an industry that is mainly extracting? How can we extrapolate this to do a transition to a manufacturing? So let's try to be in the shoes of the manufacturing industry in your countries or the countries where you have worked. And you can speculate if you don't have any experience, but extrapolate. How can we go from the use of this technology of the industry, extracting industry, to the industry manufacturing that adds value, added value to the raw material? And if you can, kind of, you know, salt and pepper it, what is in the first activity that you think it's going to be easier to do this? I hope I articulated my question correctly, so let's talk with ZETTI. You've been chosen randomly.
En realidad, Julio, lo que normalmente
Julio, what normally happens is the other way around. The mining industry is normally an industry that goes behind other industries, you know. It's not like we are the innovators or the precursors, the ones that go forward. But however, I believe that there are some things that you can extrapolate in the sense of the correct understanding of the value chain, because that correct understanding of the value chain, and that's why I took all this time explaining all the components of mining and how could it be so complex, because if you understand that value chain and say what happened, demonstrate this at the beginning, to kind of increase the complexity of the simplicity. And it made sense what Mario mentioned here, how to translate that to the board of directors. But when you do it in Evita, what you are missing is the milling processes to produce that Evita, but you're increasing the complexity of the simplicity. So that understanding that the value chain is something that is applicable to all the industries and extrapolated to any activity that we do. Another point here, I think it's very important to extrapolate, is the people. Of course, well, first thing we understand when any technology is going to be implemented, I'm gonna replace people. So there's a whole number of processes, human processes, that happen during the implementation of the technology that we have to manage correctly. And those processes are what we talked about 30, 40 years, these adaptive processes. People adapt to the situations, and finally they achieve it with a good strategy of leadership and emotional intelligence in order to overcome that particular change. So in that sense, I could say that mining industry is more advanced in terms of trying to many times these processes that are adaptive, work on them strongly before the implementation. One of the experiences, and maybe can be that I can reinforce here, is when we developed all these digital projects at Las Bambas, especially, maybe 4 years or 5 years ago. The big challenge was not the bandwidth or the servers or no sensors. It wasn't that. The big challenge was how the people are going to react to this and how they're going to adapt to this way of working, how they're going to work the planners, integrated maintenance, mining, the plant, etc. Because they can't look at each other. So those human processes of transformation that through leadership and the culture that we start building are things that you could extrapolate. So per se, Julio, I would I would say there is a big trend of topics that a human aspect, but understanding of the value added that can be perfectly happen to other fields. When you understand the value chain is when you really do an implementation. I'm not going to say for safe, but I'm going to say with more optimism. It's not like a black box. Many times we go very fast to the solution without understanding the problem. And I believe that those are the things we have to highlight. Let's take 90% of our time understanding the problem and then implement the solution and not go to the solution and hey, buy this, buy that. And then we see what we can do later when everything fails. When we fail, we lose trust. And when we lose trust, then we are back. Thank you very much, Seti. So who do we choose randomly? Mario, you're the next one.
Gracias, Javier.
Thank you, Julio. I agree with Seti in the sense that many of these technologies now, at the end, the mining is a kind of a testing field for many developers or many entrepreneurs who are proposing new ways of monitoring, controlling, or if intervene in an operation to make it more efficient or achieve the KPIs or objectives of the company. In a particular cases, the application of image analysis online systems for the control of the feeding to the SAG mills, where I can determine the size of the particles, the size of the rock, and the composition of the rock through an image analysis online. This has taken to the salmon industry to analyze the size of the fish that is coming to the plant. So I can determine the quality of the fish, the quality of the meat, the weight and size, and of course I can estimate much better what's going to be the production of that. And these have been systems developed in the mining in specific applications in the mills, and this has been extrapolated through process development processes jointly with the manufacturer in order to implement this in other industries. And this goes in hand with the challenge that we have seen this here in the development of technologies. And this involves the industry, manufacturing industry, or the manufacturing of tools that we use, the architecture of their control systems. And many times this has been, many occasions, seen as a way of defending the knowledge and protecting the intellectual properties, and this is not available for anybody. So at the end, we have a collection of equipment in the plant that they can't talk one to the other. So we have to be very careful. For example, at some moment we wanted to incorporate alternative fuels to the haul trucks. We have two brands of that truck companies. My injection code in my engine, I'm not going to give them to you. Okay, so the end of innovation, it can't do anything. If I can access to the engine, how can I change the fuel? Another example, monitoring systems for chemical compositions online, analyzers online that work on a platform IoT capable of delivering data to other systems. The configuration of the data or how the data is exported, nobody else can read it if the other equipment is not from the same brand. So I could have an equipment that is efficient and an online analyzer and a more efficient from that in another brand, but they can't speak to each other, and that's a challenge that the industry has to face. And still, there's a lot of discussion with the suppliers of the technology. So, and to have open architectures that I can integrate in my plant. Miguel mentioned, ZETTI was showing the application of the drones inside the mine, or one of the challenges there in the mining is when we are operating in open pits. I go to the fourth flotation bank, I lose the internet. I'm blind. So thinking about systems, remote control systems that can go deep to the pit is impossible because we can't have how to get the signal out of it, and we develop some camel drone farms, batch fields, but these solutions today, as Miguel was saying, these solutions, mobile, semi-mobile solutions, now we can take them to the industry of the energy generation. We have the application of the control of the gates of the admissions of water to the hydroelectric plant remotely. And this has been derived from the experience that we have acquired in this other industry when it's taken straight and applied directly, and then the manufacturers of the technology adopt it and incorporate it in their development. And that's how we see equipment that incorporates IoT. Almost a turbine, a pump, a truck has a capability of giving data that have been derived through the experiences from operations. Thank you very much, Mario, Ivan, and then Miguel. Julio, you ask us to go out of the box and look at in future, right? I would like to take you to the industry of venture capitals, entrepreneurship capital. It's translated into risk capital, and that's not, it's entrepreneurship capital. We don't say risk capital, we say venture capital. So entrepreneurship capital. So what does the industry of venture capital do? I've been investing in digital startups for 8 years. I've invested since this accelerator of startups with $3 million. We invested the $3 million in 8 years in 42 startups. 31 startups in technology, digital technologies are growing. 31 of the 42, like 70%, which is a good survival. And with now that portfolio that we invested $3 million is now $150 million, according to the last capital augmentation of each of the startups. 3 of the 31 produce a valuation of $100 million, which is a 67% of the 150. It's Simply Route, which is a software of artificial intelligence for fleet route in software. Of the other one is ZETTI. It's just a robot that goes in the aisles of the supermarkets or home improvement shops to see any break in the stock. And now it's not only Sodimac and Jumbo, but now it's in Home Depot in USA, in 30 stores, 30 robots exported from Chile to the USA. 30 robots from Chile to USA. And today, CBase has signed an agreement with Huntington with 530 stores, so $35 million. So simply Route 243. And the third one is Collector, is a artificial intelligence software. The CPD is artificial intelligence. It's not only arms and eyes, but it also has a brain. So, and then Collectia is a software for artificial intelligence to manage uh, the bad payers in credit cards and loans. So these three add up to $100 million. Why do I mention this? Because the industry of venture capital in Chile is 10 years old. The venture capital in the USA started in 1957, the same year that I was born. So in the USA, that industry has the wisdom and network of the 63 years and the wisdom and networks of 10 years in Chile. So the industry was born the same year I was born, so that it's bald and it has a white beard. And in Chile was born 10 years, so the face is fresh, similar to my granddaughter of 10 years. So we're going well because at the end of the day, Chile invested $160 million and this year $400 million, and then prior 2019 was $60 million. 60, 160 were in the good run. Okay, so why do I say this? Because Escondida has created a venture capital fund so the entrepreneurs of the city of Antofagasta apply to an accelerator that is called ASTEL. It's been managed by Magical, my accelerator, that we were hired to accelerate startups by entrepreneurs for relevant industries in the region of Antofagasta, not only the city, but also the region as mining, energy, logistics, etc. And Escondida, a grant, is not equity, it's just a grant of $1 million, so it's not so much, but it's experimental and advancing, $1 million to fund 20 startups that are going to be selected and accelerated by Aster, which is star in Greek. So new stars in the region of Antofagasta, funded by myself, by Escondida, sorry. So this is an Escondida action, as you mentioned, Julio, and I want to end my participation saying that I'm not an economist. I'm an electrical engineer in automatization control. But I told the economist, my dear friend, the best public instrument to change the production matrix in a region or a country is the venture capital industry, because in the US, if you look at the 5 top market capital in USA, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft. The 5 were funded by venture capitals, and they wouldn't exist if they didn't have venture capitals. The bill is 16 times the GDP with just $1.5 million, 7 times less than in Chile. Produce 16 times that Chile produces only by 5 companies. The magic of venture capital. So I'm a firm believer that mining industry needs to take this venture capital, understand it, incorporate it, and go to the swimming pool as Escondida BHP is doing in Antofagasta. Thank you very much, Ivan. Excellent comment, and I like it because the passion you speak, and I hope that it's going to inspire the attendees to this conference. We have to talk about passion of what we like. Miguel, please try to maintain around 5 minutes because I would like to leave the last 5 minutes for a short contribution and each one of you. Please go ahead. I agree with everybody and I agree with ZETTI. The mining or the other industries copy from mining because we are a more traditional company and we adopt these kind of things come almost at the end, right? But however, There are some things that we can learn from the processes that, or the challenges of mining, as we talked at the beginning, the lack of connectivity and all the kind of things that in other industries that are in the city, it's easier or simple. But my comment now, as a lesson learned in mining, we work in silos because that's the way the industry is. The industry was like that all the time. The big challenge is you have to break these silos. So how do we break the silos? With integrated control centers, with ways of working in integrated fashion. When people know the people, when the people know the people, then the things are transformed by themselves. So what did we learn about? We learned 2 or 3 years ago, we identified in Las Bambas something like 14 controls, 14 different control centers, and that's really impossible. We have to integrate these processes, have to integrate this in one control center. And we said, let's do it in Lima. We learned from the control center in Lima and remote. And then we did it in Lima. We did a small sampling. We do a concept testing that started in January this year, and the learning was amazing because the silos were broken when you have the operator one next to the other. They're operators that didn't even know each other. And one gives a product of the work to the other operator so that he keeps operating in this value chain that ZETTI was mentioned, but they didn't even know each other. When they sit next to each other and the operator, link A tells to the operator of link B, my production has this characteristic, and then who is in the next part of the chain, he can prepare himself. That communication were too formal or maybe never existed. When I gave them this informal one next to the other, uh, they finish their shift and they can go to drink for a beer downstairs and everything changes. And it really changes. Uh, as Ivan mentioned, I would like to measure that because uh, in weeks, the production goes from electrocardiogram reading to be a more peaceful reading. And that those are the things that we need to understand how we evaluate this. And the last example there, um, when the people are afraid, when people are under fears, if we tell the project to the person, people are resistant because they say, I'm going to be fired, I'm going to be made redundant, or they're going to fire my colleague, and this is to fire people, this is to, but when they are part of the project, it's amazing to see the difference. So when they were part of this concept testing of this control center, the first thing they said, hey, but okay, now no traffic of Lima. I don't like the traffic of Lima. I prefer the food of the camp. I can't talk with my colleague who's there because now we're in long distance. Everything was no. A week later, when when you saw that they could operate despite resistance, when was able to see that at the end of the day he could go home and hug his son every day and had dinner at home every day. He didn't think the traffic was not bad and the food of the camp was not delicious. And they didn't miss the workmate up there, so everything was positive.
Excelente.
Excellent. So the transformation, digital transformation, transform people for good. That's my last message I want to give.
Como 4 o 5 minutos
4 or 5 minutes, and I would like 1 minute to take a photo of for our memories
Somos miembros de un equipo de fútbol.
as a member of a soccer team.
Quisiera que
Each one of you maybe take a minute to share with all of the members of the audience in this conference and listening to this conference a final message. Maybe there was a question that Julio did not ask you. Ask yourself that question and answer that question in 1 minute. Let's go Mario, ZETTI, Miguel, and then Ivan. Mario. Thank you very much, Julio. Just to add, welcome to Industry 4.0. There's no way back. As Ivan said, measure little by little, measure little by little. There's no way back. The value of the implementation of technology in Industry 4.0 has been demonstrated, and everybody is identifying what is the best way to obtain that profitability from the implementation. Excellent. Ivan. I would like to say the innovation, transformational innovation, and the innovation that can transform a country, and everybody has to be included, and it's the venture capital industry and the big companies that are innovating significantly and systematically. They are incorporating what we call corporate venture capital. And I believe that all the leaders of the different mining companies and of the suppliers for mining industry, the imperative, the ethical imperative is to learn that venture capital industry, because that's going to humanize the mining and it's going to get them closer to the community. It's going to open some doors, and those silos it's inside a castle. So we are from Antofagasta at the door of Codelco or BHP, Billington, and it's a wall of 100 meters with a gate that nobody opens it. And this venture capital is producing that the startups connect with the operation, because it's a win-win for both. The city likes it, and so humanize mining, ladies and gentlemen. Venture capital industry is the way to go. Miguel, and then ZETTI, and then we take the floor. The digital transformation is possible. The challenge is measure the results as we go. And let's not forget about the 3 pillars of digital transformation, and one needs the other: people, process, technology. People, process, technology. People, because people is what we have to work with. Change management is important. If the people don't embrace it, it's not going to work. When people accept, they are part of, they add, they buy in, they get on board, and processes can change, because the process is definitely going to change. They need to change. And finally, we're going to be implementing that technology, and that's very quickly. But people process is very important, because we have to work with people and manage change management. Thank you. Miguel, ZETTI. I would say it's like everything in life. The things are there, and what are you going to do with those things? How many of those can you use? And that applies to everything. Applies to the decision-making process, leadership. You have experience, you have knowledge, and teams. Where's the difference? What can you do with that expertise, that team? If you take it to blasting, as my friends in Chile say, okay, how much energy can the rock receive to break it? How much does it absorb? It's the same case. We have from coffee machines that now with IoT, we have a cell phone that my grandmother can use, and she's 98 years old, and she can use it, and my daughter of 10 years old, what are you going to do with that? So things are there. The technology for the industry revolution 4.0 is there. What are we going to do with all of that, and how do we prepare to use them and take advantage of that? And that's the big challenge of those who are behind. How can we make that possible? Thank you. Excellent. Who is managing the system here? Okay, please, your best smile.